I'm Tom Landon. Tonight we'll learn what it takes to host a world-class mountain bike race in Roanoke. In June, it was announced that Roanoke City and County will host the 2025 and 2026 USA Cycling, Endurance, and Mountain Bike National Championships. This is a really big deal for our region and comes after decades of building up cycling infrastructure at Carvins Cove, Explore Park, and elsewhere. Here to talk about the economic and social impact of the event are two folks from the Virginia's Blue Ridge organization. John Oney is the Vice President of Sports and Sales, and Kathryn Lucas is the Director of Public Relations for Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge. Welcome to you two.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. I'm a biker. We talked about before we rolled that you guys are not really cyclists. I wouldn't put myself in any kind of class like the people we're going to talk about today. But as a longtime cyclist and one-time employee at a bike shop, I'm super excited about this, and I want to make sure our viewers are too. Before we talk about Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge or the bike races, I always just like to get to know the folks I'm in conversation with. So Kathryn, tell me about yourself and what led you to be where you are now.
Sure. So I was born and raised right here in Roanoke. I graduated from Hidden Valley High School. Then I spent 4 brief years away from here up in cold South Bend, Indiana for college. And then I really missed the mountains of Virginia's Blue Ridge. So I moved back here after college, where I became the public relations coordinator for Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge. Such a great natural fit since I've always been passionate about the area, and now I get to be paid to be a cheerleader for the area. And I've worked my way up, and I'm the director of public relations. It'll be actually 5 years next month.
That's fantastic. And John, how about you?
Yeah, originally from the Poconos in Pennsylvania. So grew up there, went to school at Penn State, and chased my dream of playing professional golf right out of school, out of college, and went to Florida. Moved to Florida and got into golf there and became a Class A member and worked at country clubs and realized quickly that I wasn't going to do anything on tour and I better find a real job. And so I got into tourism early on, sports tourism, and worked for some CVBs and convention centers and, kind of missed that 4-season mountain feel that I was always used to growing up in the Poconos. And when the opportunity came to move to Roanoke, I took it and fell in love with the place. I mean, this is just the mecca for outdoor sports, quality of life, everything you're looking for in a mountain destination. We've got it here in Roanoke.
Well, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. As a former Hoosier myself, I know that after I'd lived here for a little while, I remember flying back into Roanoke and just realizing, like for the first time, how flat it was where I grew up and how beautiful it is here. Pocono's also a lovely place. But until recently, Roanoke and the Valley and even the Blue Ridge Mountains were known more for driving through than they were for being a destination for outdoors folks. As a public relations person, maybe you know the story of how where we are today kind of got started with some ideas of, the fact that we actually had something valuable to market here.
Absolutely. So like you said, living here, everyone knows what a special place this is, but actually putting it into strategies and making sure that we can share the word and get other people to know that, that's something that Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, that's a role that we serve very well. So we are the official tourism organization for the counties of Roanoke, Botetourt, and Franklin, and the cities of Roanoke and Salem.
Right. And that's something sometimes people think, well, that was one of my questions. What is Virginia's Blue Ridge? You've kind of created a branded region, right?
Absolutely. And having 5, the average visitor does not see county and city lines. So we're really representing everything within about a 45-minute radius of the city of Roanoke. That's kind of the anchor, the hub, and then everything else spokes off. So having that regionalism is something that's very strong, sets us apart from other destinations. In the recent years, we've started branding ourselves as a metro mountain destination, really hitting on how with the city of Roanoke and downtown, you've got fantastic boutique hotels, really great places to eat, art museums with national tier exhibits. But then just 10, 15 minutes away, you've got world-class cycling, the Appalachian Trail, the Blue Ridge Parkway, America's favorite drive. So that's really something that sets us apart from maybe your other mountain destination in somewhere like West Virginia, where you might not have cell service when you come back to rest your head after your hike.
Right, right. And John, as you've gotten more, acclimated to where we are and what's going on here, how did cycling sort of start to be a focus of what we're telling the world as part of our story?
Yeah, it's hard not to. I mean, you look around, I can remember when I flew up for an interview, I got off the plane and realized, number one, there's mountains everywhere. And then I realized just walking downtown, every car seemed to have a bike rack on it. And everyone seemed to be, if they weren't in a restaurant, they were on their bikes commuting. And I've never seen that before in a community. And so it doesn't take long to realize the community of cyclists we have here of all disciplines. There's just so many opportunities to get on a bike and ride. And then, of course, that leads to questions like, well, what should we be doing from a sports tourism perspective? How can we capitalize on opportunities like this? The number one thing you need when you're looking at opportunities to bring events in is who's going to help support this? And it always goes back to the community. The community always are the ones that kind of support these ideas and really support these events. And we've got that in spades here. It started out with USA Cycling, Amateur Road Nationals. That was a road championship the last 2 years that we've hosted here in 22 and 23. We've seen that with Ironman and the multi-jurisdictional approach that we needed to do to make that event successful. And now it's just culminated back into Mountain Bike National Championship. So really impressive to see the community kind of support these events.
I also think we could even look back to just about a year before I started at VBR in 2018, I believe it was, when Virginia's Blue Ridge obtained their Silver Level Rise Center designation by the International Mountain Biking
What is that?
Association.
Because first of all, the first time I heard that, I was like, silver level? Well, that's not a gold level, but I know that it's really impressive to be a silver level mountain bike center.
And we were the first destination on the East Coast to get that Silver Level Ride Center designation from the International Mountain Biking Association. So that's where we staked our claim and started marketing ourselves as America's East Coast mountain biking capital. Since then, I believe there's a few other destinations, again, somewhere in West Virginia, that have also gained that Silver Level Ride Center. But seeing as how we were the first one, I think that provided a really good foundation for when we started bringing in these events, because you had to have the community on board to get that designation. A lot of the cycling community helped us with that. And it's with the designation, it's not just how many difficult trails you have, but it's about how accessible mountain biking can be for everyone in the community. So they look at those beginner trails as well and that kind of infrastructure.
Well, and it's interesting, John, you mentioned, the bike racks. I've got a developer friend who says, he talks a lot about cool cities, and he's got a shorthand for you're in a cool city when everybody has a roof rack on their car or a bike rack on the back, because that implies that you've got a physically fit outdoors community already in place. In terms of when things started, when I first came to Roanoke, we were a stop on the Tour DuPont, which at the time was a very prestigious road race that traveled through the region. Lance Armstrong competed in that, as did many Tour de France riders. So it's always been sort of here, but as somebody who's ridden here a long time, just the presence of things like bike lanes on the streets and the fantastic greenway system, how has the role of local governments laying track for you been important? We could talk about Carvins Cove or Explore Park.
Yeah, I mean, these events like this just simply don't happen without the support of local governments. I mean, the city of Roanoke and what Roanoke County is doing to be bike friendly is certainly something that organizations like USA Cycling look at to see, okay, is this a viable community to host one of our events? Is this something that can actually happen? And it's really about what they're doing for the community. And so we look at it as if, we're kind of using these events to showcase what our communities have to offer. And it's amazing to me that, for this event, you'll have 2,000 people come in who may never have been here before, may never have otherwise decided to come here. They'll be here. They'll see what's going on in downtown. They'll see what's going on in the counties and realize how bike friendly it actually is.
Yeah, and I know that you guys were super involved in bringing a professional cycling team, a road cycling team here as well. Maybe talk about that as part of your efforts too.
Absolutely. So we are the sponsor of Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024, which is a professional women's cycling development team that relocated their base of operations from Boise, Idaho to Roanoke and Virginia's Blue Ridge about 2 years ago. They use this area as a training grounds and a home base. They had several team members compete in the Olympics this year. Jennifer Valente brought home 2 gold medals, which was incredible. But it's also just a really great way to get our name out. So outside of the Olympics, when they're at these events and these tournaments all over the world and all over the country, they're wearing a jersey that says Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024. And when they're crossing the finish line and winning those races, they're shouting out Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024. Right? So I think that they really help us add to our credibility as a cycling destination when other cyclists see the caliber of people that are training here. And then I also think that they probably helped, I would say that they helped with, again, boosting our credibility when we were hosting USA Cycling for their site visits.
Sure. I have a friend whose son was involved in the amateur cycling racing, came from Wisconsin, came down here, was blown away by how beautiful it was, everything from Franklin County up into Craig County where they were doing some riding. And these seem to move around a little bit, right? These races tend to not stay in one place forever. What were the big things that you pitched them on in terms of coming here? Especially for this endurance mountain bike race.
Yeah, for mountain biking, it was a kind of a different pitch, and the idea was to really lead with that Metro Mountain strategy. For years, mountain bike national championships have been hosted usually at ski slopes, at ski resorts, and so what happens is you'll have all the attendees go to a ski shop or a ski resort and don't really get to experience what the area has to offer. And so they're sort of anchored there, they race there, they sleep there, they eat there. And USA Cycling came to us and said, hey, we're looking for something different. And so what we pitched was sort of a multi-jurisdictional approach that uses Carvins Cove, that uses Elmwood Park in downtown, and uses Explorer Park out in the county. And so those 3 venues will host this event. And it's nothing that these riders have ever seen before. These are Olympic style events. The short track will be in downtown at Elmwood, which I think is one of the ones that will probably bring the most.
I'm very curious about that. So it's going to be at the amphitheater, or
it's going to be at the amphitheater. Yeah, there's a course there that it's just under a mile long. It's sort of the perimeter of the park, with some features that will be built in, and from what I understand, some of those features will continue to stick around long after the championships have been here. So we're excited about that because that kind of leaves a legacy of this sport and this championship to the city of Roanoke. And I think it's something that not just the staff at the city of Roanoke, but I think the community is going to be very proud of.
And when I think of like that as well, in terms of I think of like mountain biking. I've only been to a couple races where you kind of have to hike up into the woods and find a place to be where you're not going to get run over by a biker, but also, you might be standing in the poison ivy or whatever. Whereas at Elmwood, I'm guessing that the fan experience is going to be pretty outstanding as well, right?
Oh, I would think so. I mean, you'll be able to stand inside the ropes, sort of overlooking the amphitheater and seeing probably 80% of the race happen. You may be looking in circles, but still, they're going to be flying around, elbow to elbow, 30, 40 riders together, sprinting essentially the entire time. So multiple laps, that's going to create amazing drama.
And unlike our USA Cycling road race that was Criterium that was down in downtown Roanoke, since this is in Elmwood Park, there will be little to no street closures, which should make it even more accessible for people to come down and watch.
Excellent point. That's great. I was recently out at Explorer on my mountain bike, and I hadn't been there in a couple of years, and noticed that it is undergoing a transformation of sorts. How much do we need to adapt existing trails to make them ready for this, or is it pretty much plug and play?
Yeah, it was pretty close. I mean, we pitched the idea to USA Cycling with the existing trail system in place, and I think we could have made that work. But since with the construction coming in with the new greenway that will be extended into Roanoke City, that's changed sort of the dynamic a little bit, what that trail system could look like. And so there's going to be some work to be done in the next 6 months that we'll see unveiled probably in the spring, but not a whole lot, Tom. It's all basically there. And what's great about that is riders are going to be so excited once they see the unveiling of these courses. It's not unlike anything they're used to. They're used to a lot of single track, couple features, couple loops. Here they'll have open track, a little bit wider, 3-4 riders in a row can pass whenever they want to pass. Instead of waiting to that one open spot on the trail where they can get around, they'll have many more opportunities to do that. So we're excited about that. You should start to see some courses unveiled, like I said, in the spring of 25.
Yeah, and I guess, again, something John alluded to, it's nice for us, those of us who live here who aren't just coming here for the championships, that a lot of this infrastructure, this stays here. This isn't something that just goes away, right?
Yeah.
Carvins Cove is, you alluded to its designation as a silver facility, and I don't know that folks who don't ride here understand how seemingly quickly that became just an amazing place. You didn't used to be able to bike in those woods. There were rules against being anywhere near the water. Mm-hmm. That Carvins Cove location, what did you hear from the folks when they came to look at the facilities about Carvins
Yeah,
Cove?
they didn't just look at it, Tom.
They wrote
it. And I heard now I'm not a rider, so I wasn't out there with them. So I'm just hearing this through contacts. I know that they've said phrases like, "That's all you want," or "These are some of the best routes on the East Coast." So referring to Carvins Cove. We may need to make this a little easier for the national.
Oh, there's a couple trails out there that I wouldn't touch in a million years.
Hands down.
But and also the fact that those are largely maintained by I mean, the communities contribute, but the cyclists themselves are responsible for a lot of that, right?
It's true. There's a volunteer group that handles a lot of the maintenance out there. It's directed by the city of Roanoke, but a lot of the sustainability of the trail systems in general in our region are maintained by volunteer groups. And that's something that we have to be very careful of when looking at larger events. What kind of impact will these have to these venues? And then what do we have in place to sort of mitigate any of those issues? And so one of the things we're working on with USA Cycling, and I hope we can get this to work, is having some dollars that come in from registration get funneled back to some of these
back into maintenance, because those trails will get
100%.
Yeah. So Kathryn, as the public relations person, I think it's always interesting for people who live here to hear about the work you guys are doing. And I know that you guys have put a lot of effort into kind of identifying your primary markets, and the Northern Virginia and DC area has become a big source of tourism dollars for us, hasn't it?
It is. So our VP of marketing, David, does a great job of identifying. We've got a couple different programs we work with, Zartico, Key Data, that tell us where our visitors are coming from, how much money they're spending. And Northern Virginia, DC was identified as the top area for visitation. Richmond is closely behind in that we have slightly less visitors from Richmond, but they spend more than the DC visitors. So that's another market that we've been looking into. The spring campaign that we did this year and the previous year, those are just over and above what we already do every single day, on top of the existing marketing that we have in those areas. Public relations works with marketing to complement those efforts, so that we'll host travel writers or go up and meet with media in similar areas so that the people who live there can continue to get hit with a message of visit Virginia's Blue Ridge and Roanoke multiple times. They'll see it on the side of a bus, they might see it in Union Station, and then they'll open up Northern Virginia Magazine at home and they'll see another thing about how we're a great fall destination.
Right. And, you explain, you talk about these marketing plans and this research and the advertising dollars. I'm sure it all adds up. We always get somebody to ask us, well, who's paying for all this? So who is paying for all of this?
So the visitors are actually paying for it. So we are funded by a bed tax or a lodging tax. So whenever you go to a hotel, you typically see that small little line item of maybe it's 8%, 7%. Most of our jurisdictions are 8%. And we get a small percentage of that lodging tax. So every time that someone comes into Virginia's Blue Ridge to one of those 5 jurisdictions and stays at a property, that tax money goes back to our localities. So we only get a portion of that money. So these visitors are actually also helping provide tax dollars to our local governments as well. So it really is, tourism is really about also increasing the quality of life for our local residents, because without the residents, without our amazing businesses and attractions, we wouldn't have this destination.
And John, back to the biking a little bit. It may be too early to ask this question, but I mean, what you're describing sounds like you need, much like the marathon and the Ironman competitions and other things, you're going to need an army of volunteers to pull this off.
First of all, Tom, never too early to talk about volunteers. I mean, they are the backbone of these events. We couldn't do it without them. And so while we don't have a clear strategy for volunteers in terms of shift work and what days, that'll all be posted in January. But we'll need it. But for now, everyone can go to visitvbr.com to check out our feature page for the Mountain Bike Nationals. And we update that constantly. And so once we have more information on volunteers, that'll happen. We'll plug those in. But that's I'm glad you said that's critical. But we can't wait to do that part, because that, again, is another touch point for our community. Kathryn mentioned what economic impact does for the community, but it also does some other things. It allows us to showcase some of our charitable nonprofit organizations that are local, who are the bulk of those volunteer groups. And so that's huge for us. And
right. Often I know I volunteer for the Blue Ridge the marathon for the Grandin Theater every year, and that if we get 20 volunteers or whatever, the organization gets $1,500 or something. It's definitely worth it to us, and I'm sure there are lots of other small groups out there that would love to be able to. It's just a nice one day. You feel part of the community. I'm sure that beyond just the mountain biking, which is going to be fantastic, there are going to be some other events around this that the community will be able to participate in. What do you see those as being right now at this point?
Yeah, first of all, I'm really excited about, having an event is one thing, but the months leading up to is another thing. And what I love about this event is it gives us plenty of time to talk about our destination from a mountain biking perspective, but also gets we invite people to come in and say, hey, come take a look at the course. Bring your family. And while you're doing that, now they get to see all the other things going on in our communities, the museums, the art, the heritage. And so they come to our community beforehand to check it out and have some family time, and then they come back for the tournament or the race. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, I'm sure for national championships, if I were a very serious rider and I wanted to compete in that, I might want to come here, spend a little time and ride for a while, right?
Several of the people that we saw in Paris will be right in our tracks in Roanoke. And
yeah, this is truly world class, right, John?
It's 100% world class, and you're right, Kathryn. A lot of the elite riders that we saw mountain bike discipline at the Olympics will be participating in this event, so we're excited to welcome them to Roanoke. But let's face it, I mean, sports tourism in general is kind of a big deal. It's a $128 billion business. There was a study performed by Sports ETA last year that unveiled that $52 billion of direct spending occurred for just sporting events across the country. The Commonwealth of Virginia alone recorded $2.7 billion in visitors just for sports. And we're not talking professional sports. We're talking youth and amateur
Soccer,
sports. Exactly what we're talking here. Yeah, mountain bikes. And so for us, we measured that as well. And I think last year we saw just over $20 million in economic impact come in just because of sporting events. So, having events like this means a lot to the community, but it also means a lot to the visitors because, we want to provide them a world-class, elite championship, and they're going to get that here.
Sure. And do we know any projections on the economic impact?
I knew you were going to ask that, Tom. Yeah, we always do that. That's one of the first things we talk about is, when opportunities come up, like what could this look like, right? How many people, how many days, where are they staying? And so for the analysis that we did, we're looking at about $2.2 million in economic impact. They're coming in probably on a Saturday. Competition starts on Monday, runs through Sunday that week. So it's multiple days.
Right. This isn't a marathon that comes and happens in one day.
It's not. They're coming in. Most of these riders will be riding at least 2, maybe some of the ones will be riding all 3 of those distinct races. But yeah, we estimate about 2.2 million.
Well, we didn't have time to talk about the specifics of the races and all the nerdy stuff. I want to know about what kind of bikes are they riding, all this other stuff. But we are out of time, and I just would like to thank Kathryn and John for taking the time to come share this exciting news with us. To follow announcements on the event, visit Virginia Blue Ridge website at visitroanokeva.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And thank you guys. We're going to be following this with a great interest, and I appreciate it. So for What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.